Hey guys, it's Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make raw techno like Randomer. We're going to be talking more about his more industrial tinge sound, which you hear in tracks like Stigma, Flooring, and Stylo. As always, you can get the project file and samples, and MIDI, and presets, and all that stuff from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's get started. So, this is a loop you heard in the intro. We are at 135 BPM, and the first sound that we have here is this drone, which sounds like this. So this is just playing this one note here. You can see it's just playing E. That's the key we're in. And what's happening here is really it's more about the sound because it's just droning on that one note. With this one, we have this little operator drone thing that I made. You can see it's just FM synthesis with 4 sine waves, and what's happening is they're just kind of all at different octaves, different pitches. I've got the fine tune up a little bit as well, so they're detuned a little bit, and then everything is going into a bandpass filter. So here's before that, and then with it kind of dials it back a little bit, and then we have this LFO here, and this is on the pitches of every oscillator. So this helps when you want to make kind of like a more ominous sort of like looming drone like this. It's kind of a nice way to make it not just like that, which is how it would usually be if you were making a more melodic track. But with this, it kind of turns this into more of like a effect sound and less of like a just standard drone. So yeah, then after that, we've got a bit of chorus, just kind of spreading the sound out, making it a bit bigger. We've also got a bit of reverb on that, just kind of giving it some more space. With this one, the reverb isn't super audible, but it's more for the atmosphere. Then after that, we just have a compressor sidechaining into the kick. And the key with this one is this pre-effects thing here, because you can see we have a rumble kick. You can also hear. So, you don't want to sidechain it to the kick after the rumble. You want to sidechain to the kick before the rumble. So that's what this pre-effects is doing here. Yeah, that is it for the drone. Next thing we have here is this pluck, which sounds like this. So here are the notes. It's pretty simple. It's just kind of like this uneasy sounding, like very dark. Kind of little pluck line like this. It's just about more like the rhythm and just kind of how it's, playing off of the whole beat there. But yeah, for the sound on this one, it's made using operator. This one is also FM synthesis, so FM synthesis is really good anytime you want to make like a cold sound or like a more just kind of aggressive sound, something like this where it's like, this isn't a smooth pluck. This isn't just like a nice saw wave into a low pass filter. This is very machine-like and digital sounding. And this is how you get that. It's using FM synthesis. So you can see here, we just have 3 sine waves just doing the FM here. They're detuned a little. And then with this one, part of what makes it interesting is the way I have this coarse pitch being automated. So if you look at this on the thing here, you can see the coarse tuning of oscillator B is being automated. You can hear it very slightly changing the timbre of the sound. Like, it's very subtle, but it just kind of gives it this textural shift over the course of the sound that makes it feel very interesting and very alive. When I was putting this up against reference tracks, specifically Randomer's track Stigma, which you may recognize this pluck from, it's never just like the pluck. Like, it's always got something a little bit more to it to kind of make it change and evolve and make it sound exciting. And so this is how we do that here. We're just going in and playing with the fabric of the sound. And like I said, changing it over the course of time to make the sound more interesting. I've also got this LFO here on the oscillator, or on the volume of oscillator B. So that's also giving it a little bit of movement. But yeah, then after that, we just have a bit of a pitch envelope. That's the only other thing, is to make it really pluck. If I turn this off, you can hear it doesn't really have that like hit to it like this does. So the pitch envelope is also important. But yeah, after that, we just have a bit of echo, just doing 16th notes. With this one, it's not so much about having like a super long echo, but more just something quick that has that kind of like kind of release to it. Then we've got a bit of reverb, so you can see with this one, it's just like a really short reverb, like with the size down. We've got the decay time down a little bit as well. And yeah, it's just giving the sound a little bit more space without being too much with a really like quick plucky sound like this. Then after that we have a bit of drum bus. This is just fattening the sound up even more. This helps to bring out the echo and the reverb and make everything just a lot fatter and more together. And then the last thing we have on here is an auto filter, just cutting out the lawn. And that is it for the pluck. The next thing that we have here is the saw wave stab, which sounds like this. This is very similar to the pluck, where it's like really simple MIDI, you know, just bouncing up and down between E and F. It's just about how it's fitting in there rhythmically. And like you can really hear, yeah, it's just all about the rhythm there. For the sound on this one, it's made using wavetable. What we have is we have two saw waves, and you can see they're an octave apart, and I've got them detuned a little bit as well. Then those are going into a low pass filter, which you can see the low pass has an envelope on it. This is the same envelope on the amplitude. Yeah, there's the matrix you can see. And then the last thing on here is the unison, which you can see I just have turned up all the way. So what I was going for with the sound was just like this big, old school sounding kind of like saw wave stab, like I was saying. And this is how you get that, is using this unison. If I turn this off, you know, it doesn't really have that kind of like, that same feel to it. Essentially, it's not as big and it's not as full sounding. So yeah, that is it for inside the synth. Then we just have a bit of echo, doing dotted eighth notes. After that, we have a bit of erosion. This really helps to make this sound like a stab. Again, I was trying to make this sound, really, I was trying to make it sound sampled. I was trying to make it sound like one of those rave generator stabs or something like that. And this really helps with that because it just does something to the high end that you can't really do any other way. If I turn this off, you can hear it still sounds pretty much like the same sound, but when we play it in the full mix, you know, it just doesn't really have like the same grittiness to it that everything else has. But when we turn this erosion on, like I said, it just feels a lot more gritty, a lot more sampled, a lot more crunchy. It just really helps with making that high end sound less pristine, if that makes any sense. After that, we have these two drum buses. These are really helping to fatten the sound up. Here's without them. Then with the first one, and then with the second one. So you can hear these just really take the sound, make it hit really hard, and make it really sit on top of the mix. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on in this mix. A lot of it is fighting for the same space. So this sound, you know, you need something like this to make it fatter and make it really sit on top of the mix. And then the last thing we have on there is just an auto filter cutting out the lawn. That is it for the stab. The next sound we have here is the kick, which sounds like this. So this is a pretty standard rumble kick. You can see I'll show you the original kick sample. There's the original kick. It's just like this hard hitting, very punchy kind of techno kick. And then I've got that. I think I have a bit of a pitch envelope on that. Yeah, so there's without the pitch envelope. And then with it, so you can hear this just adds a bit more like click and impact and attack to the sound. Then after that we have a bit of saturation, just kind of fattening it up a little bit. Then we have the rumble. You can see we've got this audio effect track. I've got two chains, got the dry chain. And then the rumble chain, and then they're being blended together. So with the rumble chain, we just have a bit of reverb going into an amp and then going into a filter. I'll show you. So here is just the reverb. You put it into the amp, which you can hear makes it very blown out, but if you listen, it's really focusing in on that like deep low end. Then we just filter it out, so it's just the low end. And I have a compressor side chaining it to the dry kick, and this is set to that pre-effect setting, just like I was saying with the drone. It's just like, you know, side chaining it to that instead of the rumble kick, because the rumble kick would just duck it out of the way the whole time. And yeah, and that is pretty much it for the rumble. Like I said, it's very simple. It's just a matter of blending it together and getting it, you know, to really fit right. After that, we have a few effects that kind of tie it all together. Basically, it's just some EQ and some drum bus. So I've got the EQs. You can see there's one before, one after. Both of them are cutting out the low mid-range just to get rid of some mud. And then the one after is boosting the mid-range as well as boosting the low end, just to really bring out like the punchiness of the kick. These just help to focus it. You know, when you use saturation and drum buss and stuff to fatten your sound up, it can oftentimes make it a little bit less focused. But this helps to just really focus it in on what we want. And then the other thing here is the drum buss. So you can see this is on the hard setting. Get the drive and the crunch up. Get the transients up as well. This really helps to make the kick hit harder and sit right in the mix. But it also just glues the kick to the rumble a little bit. Like if I turn this off, you can hear they're in very different spaces in the mix. But when I turn it on, it all just feels like one. And yeah, that is it for the kick. The next thing we have here is this final noise, which sounds like this. So it's just a layer of some nice textured sounding final noise. You know, it adds that crispy, kind of high-end noise to the overall track. If I turn it off, you can hear it's very subtle, but this is really important because it's adding a lot of atmosphere. And when you listen to this music, it really sounds like there's a lot of atmosphere. It sounds like it's very built up. It sounds like there's a lot of attention to detail in terms of not just the main sounds, but the background and how everything comes together to feel a certain way. This is the kind of stuff that's really going to add a lot for that specific goal. Like, it just kind of gives you that little bit of noise in the background that makes it feel more lived in and more like a space that you're putting yourself into and an atmosphere, as opposed to just a bunch of distorted sounds. After that, we have this drum rack, which just has some percussion in it. It sounds like this. So this is that constant percussion loop you hear in the background. Yeah, it's pretty important. If I turn it off and then on again, you can hear it having this like that is very important for the intensity of the track. It makes it feel a lot more like alive and intense when you have something like this versus if we just use the hi-hats, even though those are in the high end. So they should be adding a lot of hype. It's just not as powerful as when you have this in there. So yeah, with this, we just have these three little percussions playing off of each other. I've got a bit of drum buss to tie those all together and make them a bit fatter and stronger. And then I have an auto filter cutting out the lawn, and that is it for the drum rack. The next thing we have here is this first hi-hat, which sounds like this. So this one's pretty simple. It's just this like kind of, you know, sharper, more like drum machine style hi-hat. I've just got a little bit of short reverb on that and a bit of drum buss to fatten it up. It's important to really make your hi-hats fat and powerful in these type of tracks. Like, if the hi-hats aren't really sitting in the mix the right way, like if this was too quiet or wasn't as sharp and full as this is with the reverb and the drum buss adding that, it just wouldn't sit in the mix right. And the overall thing is going to feel a lot less powerful. And it's like, yeah, if your hi-hats don't really hit right, that's one of the things that can really make it sound just too thin and not professional. So definitely very important to have the reverb and the drum buss on that one. After that, we have the last sound, which is the second hi-hat. It's made of 2 layers, and it sounds like this. So this is the one that's playing on the upbeats. Like I said, it's 2 layers. We've got this one, which is a sample, and this one, which I synthesized. And what's happening here is we get the nice high end from this one, which is a sample, and then we get kind of some body added in from the one that's in the mid-range. You can hear if I play the mix with just the high end one, it's not quite hitting. Like if you listen to some tracks and then listen to this, it's not going to sound right. But if we add in that mid-range hi-hat, there we go, it gives us that body. So it's one of those things where it's like the mix and the elements that you have in the mix are almost as important as what they're doing. And sometimes something like this can be the small difference that makes a big difference in the overall track. So with the first one, it's just a little sample. Got it going through a bit of chorus to spread it out, a bit of reverb to give it some atmosphere and some space. And then I have an EQ8 boosting the high end. And then the second one, like I said, is made using operators. So this is just some bandpass, some white noise going into a bandpass filter. And the bandpass filter is really just making a hit in the mid-range, because again, that's all we need from this sound. And yeah, and then I have the same processing on that I had on the other one, save for the high-end boost. And yeah, that is it for that hi-hat. It's a pretty simple sound, but again, it's important to think of the layering and like why you want to add that second layer, because it's really going to make a big difference in the overall track and how professional and full it sounds. The other thing I want to talk about with this is master processing. You can see I've got a bit of saturation and a bit of EQ8 on the master, and you can listen. If I turn these off, sure, it hits pretty hard. But you can hear when I turn them on, everything is getting really crunched together and really sort of like, it's just helping to give it that like overall texture that you hear in this music. You know, when you hear this kind of stuff, a lot of times what separates this from the more standard sounds of techno that I talk about on this channel a lot is how everything feels kind of squashed together. Like everything feels like it's going through this one set of processing that's making it all sound very close together texturally and sonically. And this is how you do that, is just by putting everything through the same processing. And then the key here is just using it subtly and only getting the thing that you want from it. And so what I mean by this is with the saturated, you can see it's not doing a whole lot of saturation. You'd honestly probably be surprised to see how little saturation this is doing. But the little bit that it's doing, it's just doing exactly what we want and not too much. Like, what we want with this is that crunchiness. If I turn this off and then turn it on, that's what we're going for. We're trying to get everything to crunch together. So, instead of just turning the drive up a bunch, you can see I have the drive at a pretty conservative level, and then I use this bass frequency down here. And with this, you don't have to use that much, and it'll get you that sound. So here's without that. And then with it, you can see, just turning that up 1.86 is enough. So you don't want to just put a huge distortion on the master and just start turning it up. Try getting something more subtle like this and, you know, just really get it for what you want out of it and not too much. Because this is how you still use a saturation like this on the master without it taking over the whole mix and with it more kind of adding something to the mix. The only other thing I have on the master there is just a bit of EQ8. This is just helping to kind of focus the track. It's like I said with the EQs on the kick. You know, here's before it. And then after it. So you can see it's just cutting out a bit of low mid-range, so cutting out some mud, boosting the low end a little bit, making that a bit fatter, and then just giving it a bit of a high-end boost as well to bring out the hi-hats and bring out the crunchiness. And that is it for the master channel, and that is also going to be it for this video, guys. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all that stuff from this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it is already all available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.